Hello, and welcome back to Many Adventures Mini. So this week I am continuing along playing with my new resin 3D printer and trying out some new stuff. After the Beholder miniature I painted out last week, I decided to join the Artisan Guild Patreon so that I could get access to more of their files for printing out. And after a long couple weeks of fiddling with different kinds of resins and tweaking my settings and whatnot, and definitely a shout out to the Anycubic Photon Owners Facebook group. There's a bunch of great, well informed people on there willing to help newbies out, figuring out what's going on. So, thanks to everybody there, it helped out a lot. But getting back on track, I picked out one of the miniatures from the Artisan Guild's Patreon for this month. The theme that they have on their Patreon this month is called the Fighters Guild. They have a variety of different fighter type characters, and every month they have what they call like a pinup model. I guess it's kind of like just like a beauty model or whatnot. And I like the look of this one for this month, and it had a part of the model that was going to allow me to practice a painting technique I haven't played around with much and wanted to get more practice at. So I decided to try printing that one out and painting it. So we'll go ahead and jump into that here. I went ahead and recorded a little bit extra than normal, showing a bit more of the printing process before we get jumped into the painting. So the video ends up being a little bit longer this time. So let's go ahead and we'll jump straight into that. Alright, so to start off with, I thought I'd include a little snapshot here of what the file looked like in the software after I'd applied all the supports and whatnot. And here is my printer. This is an Anycubic Photon S printing in Ulegu gray resin. I sped this up to 100 times speed. This print took about 3.5 hours, and I probably won't show this too often just because resin printers like this aren't all that interesting to watch due to how they work. This build plate lowers into a vat of resin, and a UV LCD screen underneath shines light in particular patterns in order to create the different layer shapes. Because of that, it means that you can't really see what's going on until the print is most of the way done. And with the smaller stuff I'm going to be printing most of the time for miniatures, you pretty much won't be able to see anything until it's just about done anyway. You'll be able to tell that here. So like I said, the basic process is it goes down, the LCD light turns on, cures a thin layer of resin, and then it lifts up to peel it off of the plastic film between the resin and the light, and then it goes back down to the correct layer height and does it again. Pretty straightforward and simple, and it's not all that complicated, but it's a pretty high resolution LCD, and that's between that and how thin the layers are, you get a really high resolution and effect on the prints that you do. So yeah, pretty straightforward there. So you can see it's just about done here, and then I could show you a little bit of what goes on for the post-processing for one of these miniatures. You have to be really careful because this resin is toxic when it's wet. So I'm just using a metal putty knife and I'm scraping it off of the build plate there and just putting it back. This is just 91% isopropyl alcohol that I got from the store. It's a little dirty because I've used it for washing other prints before, but I'm just using the strainer to swish it in here for several minutes just to get most of the resin off. And then here I've got an ultrasonic cleaner, which is often used for cleaning things like jewelry and whatnot, and I just pop it in there for 5 minutes to get the rest of it off, and then I pull it out, and at this point the resin is still somewhat soft, so I take the opportunity to remove the support material that was used to hold everything up while the miniature was printing. and then I start working on cleanup a little bit. I've found since this that it's a little bit better to just get the worst of it here and just go through the post-curing process and then coming back to do a lot of the secondary cleanup later, since it's a little bit more difficult to do it just at this point. And then here's a picture of my little UV lamp. This is actually for like curing like nail art stuff, but it works great for this. I just pop it in there for an hour. And then we have our normal initial starting point with the surround of this miniature. So like I said, it's kind of like a beauty gravure model of a fighter character. So I thought this would be kind of fun, and it's got a torch there. So yeah, my first step is I'm using some primer. Extra step is I threw some white primer up just on from the top, sort of a pseudo zenithal, just to get more of a direct effect from this black contrast paint that I'm using on the hair to make it black. I figured that would help it show through better and get me some good effects. And then I use that lava orange and dragon red. I actually mix it together a little bit just to get a bit of a darker orange to put down and get kind of this orange deserty color. Then I come in with tanned flesh and go around and get all the base colors on the fleshy bits. It shows just how much skin is being shown here. It's, you know, kind of what you might expect from something like this, I suppose. So I'm just making sure to get everything covered this way before I move on to working on any of the other colors. And at this point I'm still kind of trying to decide where I want to go with all of my colors. But after I get that basic stuff in, I take some leather brown and I go ahead and get the boots down here, as well as the backs behind these shin guards that she's got on. I figured those would be a fairly standard leather color, so that's what I went with. And I think it works out pretty well. You know, like I've said before, you don't have to be too special about it. It works, and you don't have, so you just coat it and don't worry about it and come back to it later. Next, I use this plate mail color to get the armor parts. So I'm starting here with these shin guards that come up and like wrap around the top of the calf a little bit, and just apply protection down here. This is an interesting model in this kind of case because the armor is only in like a few spots. It's got like the shin guard and then like along the left arm, and that's like about it for the armor. So that's kind of interesting. I take a quick break there and I apply some dragon red around the corset that she's wearing, just to apply that color in there, since I had decided I was going to go with that. Just wanted to get it out of the way, hitting some more areas that I missed earlier, and just kind of hopping all over the place and touching areas up a little bit, making sure I actually got all the skin that I needed to. I put more dragon red on the loincloth thing here coming down from her belt. It's not actually like attached to the corset, but I decided to go with the same color, so I just went with that going through. And again, touch it up a few areas that I might have missed. Smoothing everything out a little bit, getting the sword painted up, and getting the left arm of all this armor in there. Still, at this point, this is just like basic base coating. You just get your basic mid-tone or dark colors on before you start doing things like washes or highlighting. And here I'm actually using some matte black because I decided I needed some contrast with the straps here, and I just wanted something besides another brown. So I decided I'm going with black leather on the straps here. So I apply that on the backs of the boots and on the backs of the arm guards as well. And then I also make her belt a black leather. Not sure exactly if this did what I wanted it to in the end, but it did give it contrast from just the brown leather boots, which was what I was going for in the first place. I also use it as kind of like the strap holding up the pant legs there to the corset. I don't really remember what those are called, but yeah, that's what I use it for. And then I just go back to the leather brown for the straps around her right arm holding the torch. And then I use the mummy robes here for the, I guess it's like a bodice, and then like the tops of these hose pants. I think that might be the right term. Just get all that in there just to have a nice like white base. It's one of my preferred methods there. Then I'm bringing in my oak brown, darker brown, to be the handle for this torch. And it seemed to be the right choice to me, so that's kind of what I went with there. Nothing really all special. Then again, just going around and doing some touch-ups. Then I'm coming in here with this bright demonic yellow as the base color I start with on this torch. And once I get everything coated in with that, I go ahead and pull in some of the lava orange that I was using earlier, and I just use it straight without mixing it this time, and start layering it up so that the lower and deeper areas of the fire on this torch stay yellow, and as you get farther out it turns more orange. And I don't want to have very much yellow in here at all because that's the hottest, brightest part of the fire in the center, so I'm trying to layer it up around the outside. And then after that I come to this bright pure red just for like the edges of the fire. This is the coolest and the coolest part of the fire, and so that's what turns red. Then after that I come in and do the eyes real quick with my standard method of black with a little bit of mummy robes and then some another dot of black for the pupil. And then I use a little bit of skeleton bone here on the base just to get this little skull there. Then I'm pulling in this burnt umber wash, and I apologize that I get a lot of this out of frame, but I use it on the base to get some recesses there, as well as the boots. But then I just very lightly kind of use it to tint and glaze the tops of the pants and the bodice. And this kind of gives like an old fabric effect, and I got it all completely off of the camera because everything shifted around a little bit on me when I was setting up the printer, and this is my old position of where the camera was, and so I had it a little bit off. But you can see here, this is what it looks like afterwards. I just didn't let the wash pool and just used it to tint everything. And I'm letting that dry, and I'll come back and do some more with that later. But then I use this greedy gold here as an accent color on the armor to help everything pop a little bit. I'm just going around some of the edges on the knee and elbow pads and on the shoulder pad, just to add some variation there to make it interesting, and I thought gold worked the best. But I'm coming back here with mummy robes that has been watered down into a glaze just to bring out some of the highlights on that cloth again and make it look a little bit less dirty, but still like it's kind of like well used and not necessarily like crisp or something like that. And it gets a pretty nice effect going in like that. So I'm just going around here and filling in some additional details on the handle, making sure everything's up here the way I want it to. Apply a little bit of that pure red to her lips to be kind of like a lipstick sort of effect. And then I come in with my barbarian flesh. This is my next tone up on my skin tones. I also end up mixing this with a little bit of red just to get a little bit of a pink color that I can add onto here in a few places just to get a more natural like pinkish skin tone. The out-of-the-box flesh tones work great, but I've started experimenting with adding bits of red and blue in there to get different effects with warm spots and shadows and whatnot. So here you might be able to see it, I've added a little bit of pink at this point for some of my areas that need it. I don't put it everywhere, but I do put it in a lot of places. And then I'm using a little bit of my leather brown as a dry brush on the base just to make it look more earthy and dusty. And I also bring out the elven flesh, which is my highest highlight point that I go ahead and put a little bit on the face and on the hands and whatnot, just as my highest highlight point. And then you saw I pulled out a dark blue. This is what I use mixed with my dark tanned flesh to create a little bit of a bluish shadow color. I think it works very well for some of the stuff for some of the shadowed areas that you can do and whatnot, and it got kind of the effect that I was going for. And then here you can see I'm trying to play around with a different kind of technique. Because she's holding this torch, I'm using a painting technique called object source lighting, where I'm trying to create the illusion of light from the torch shining down on her face and body from the torch. And I'm using another technique along with this called two-brush blending, where I'm using kind of a thin paint and I'm applying it with one brush, and then the other brush is just wet with water that I'm using to, and it's only just damp, not drenched, but just barely damp. So I apply a little bit with the one brush and then use the other brush to somewhat just blend it out so I don't just have a solid spot. And so here I'm just building up some colors of orange here just to make sure I've hit all the surfaces that I think will most likely be touched by this orange color. Just trying to get everything to hit straight and find all the areas where the light would hit naturally so that it shows up properly when I'm working on it. And then I also use just a little bit of the demonic yellow as well for showing just the brightest areas close to the flame. And I just do this across all the areas that the fire can reasonably hit. Also use just a little bit of black wash for the fuller in the center of the sword there, just so that it stands out better. But I just keep touching this up, hitting a couple of areas. I maybe even went a little bit overboard with this object source lighting, but I liked the way it ended up looking in the end. And then the usual last step that I have, and with my matte Vallejo primer, and you can see the final results. I really liked this. Looking at these, you can't really even tell this was a 3D printed miniature, and I am super satisfied with this, and we'll probably do several more miniatures like this in the future. Alright, well, I hope you enjoyed that. I really enjoyed painting this miniature. I went through a lot of different versions trying to get this to print out correctly, and when I finally got it right, I had a blast painting it. I think it came out looking pretty good, and I liked getting to practice some new techniques along the way and learn some stuff. That was a lot of fun for me. So if you have any questions or comments, put them in the comment section down below. I love reading those and responding to any questions. If you liked my videos, please give it a thumbs up. That helps out a lot. And if you want to catch any more of my videos, please hit subscribe and click the bell icon so you get notified whenever any of my videos go up. And if you are interested, please go take a look at my Etsy store, where you can find some miniatures that I painted that I will put up there for sale. As well, you can find my Patreon link down below. It's kind of bare bones right now, so feel free to give me any advice on things I could put in there that people might be interested in. And as well as I have just added a Facebook page, which I'll put a link to that again down in the description if you want to go check it out. I'm hoping to put video announcements and maybe some teasers and stuff down in there if people want to keep in touch. It's also a great way to contact me directly outside of using YouTube as well. So with all that out of the way, I hope to see everybody here again next week.